Last night in Sweden, I think most of us remember those ominous words uttered by President Donald Trump a couple of years ago. Since then, the situation in Sweden has been caught the attention of Elon Musk, Viktor Orban, and a lot of other politicians, journalists, all across the globe. But our politicians doesn't really want to acknowledge the situation. But we do have some American journalists still coming to Sweden after Tim Pool to get their own perspective on what's happening. And with us here today, we have none other than Mr. Sean Daniels. From the YouTube channel, it's Sean Daniels with us. Welcome, Mr. Daniels.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
As you might understand, you who's viewing us right now, we're speaking English because Mr. Daniels doesn't know any Swedish, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think I know like one word. Was it like tech or what's the No, I know skål obviously, but
Oh, skål, yeah, cheers.
That's...
And I also wish to give a big shout out to Mr. Tim Borgqvist, the man behind TV Team Sweden, who Mr. Daniels and his fiancée is with right now, and who's giving them a tour of Malmö, the infamous crime capital of Sweden.
Yeah. Shout out to Tim. Shout out to Tim.
Real quick. Tim, can you please come to the camera?
Yeah.
Hi guys.
I think most of our viewers recognize Tim Borgqvist, and if you don't, go visit his channel, TV Team Sweden. A real big thank you for providing this contact. But Mr. Daniels, could you please give a quick introduction to who you are, so our viewers know who's speaking?
Yeah, sure. I'm a American political commentator on YouTube. Have about like 300 and something thousand subscribers on there, and I've mostly made commentary videos talking about the US political situation, cheering on Trump, really, watching liberals get destroyed. But after living in Europe on and off the last 2 years, my attention has really turned to the migration situation because I've seen a firsthand experience of really how bad the situation is. And while being over in Europe the last few months, I've really wanted to try to shine a light on that. And so I've started going around to certain countries that have the situation pretty bad and documenting what's going on, talking to migrants. And I started in Slovenia, went to Italy, and now came to another hot spot in Sweden. And I've been shocked by what I've been able to learn and see.
And is this the first time you've been to Sweden?
Yeah, this is the first time. We landed like, I think a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and we were pleasantly surprised in a good and in a negative way, but mostly positively. Sweden is beautiful. We see how modern it is, how organized it is, how friendly the locals are. But we've also been really shocked to see the depravity of the migration situation.
Mm-hmm. You've been to Slovenia, you've been to Italy, and as I understand it, you're also going to Denmark. Why did you choose these particular countries, and why did you choose Sweden?
So Slovenia is because that's where my fiance's from, and we've lived there. Italy, we've lived there as well. She's kind of from there as well. And I wanted to go there because I've seen it before in person, just how, especially in Italy, how bad it is. And after going to Slovenia and talking to the migrants and learning some of the secret ways they come into the country and that they're so proud about it, and also learning how they're able to stay relatively easy, the benefits they get, I started looking up different hotspots, and I saw that Sweden was, until the UK took it over, was the rape capital of Europe. And it was such a shocking thing to realize because I think of Sweden as blonde, blue eyes, white people, this modern society, not realizing that there's bombings all over. They compare it to Mexico, they compare it to Iraq. So when I learned about that, I thought, okay, we have to go up to Sweden and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And you just listed a couple of perspectives or things that drew your attention. But if you give a bigger picture, if you summarize it, what is your impression of the situation in Sweden? And if you compare it to Slovenia and Italy especially?
It's a lot different than what I see in Italy. Slovenia is a whole different ballgame. It's in a initial stage. It has some migrants. You know, it's not packed in some hot areas like you see in Sweden, like you see in Italy. In Italy, you see a lot of uh, Middle Easterners packed in communities, just like you see in Sweden, but you also see a lot of middle or sunny coast Africans, the really, really dark, dark black Africans, hanging around, loitering around, sitting in parks. That's what you see in Italy. And in Sweden, what I've seen so far by going to Rinkeby, by going to Rosengård, by going to Husby, Tensta, is that the Muslim communities have this concentration where they have whole communities that have been taken over by them. And they're literally like a no-go zone for white people. They're a no-go zone for Swedes. If you go in there, you feel so uncomfortable and out of place, and they don't make you feel comfortable for the most part.
And what has shocked you the most when you've been to these places here in Sweden?
What shocked me first was how friendly some of the younger generation were, like the second generation immigrants, the people in their early 20s. You know, they were excited to see that somebody was there and they were interested. You know, you have a camera. But what shocked me too was how unfriendly and how much of an attitude the older generation, you could tell like the first generation immigrants who came here, and also the young kids. We had young kids who were like 12 and under, maybe 13 and under, that were very aggressive. They were giving us attitude. You could see they were not blessed or excited that we were there. And to see how programmed these kids probably become to have negative attitudes towards whites, that was shocking. The older generation, I guess it's more understandable. They come here and they feel privileged and they're like, what are you doing in my community? But to see the kids under 12 years old have attitude and confronting us, that was shocking.
I'm just gonna turn for a quickie in Swedish to our viewers. Såna här inslag kan ni se på FrihetsNytt, dels tack vare fantastiska kontakter som Tim Borgqvist, men också tack vare det stöd som ni ger oss, som gör det möjligt för oss att utvecklas, bli ännu bättre och alltid vara på hugget. Vill ni stötta oss, bli då prenumerant, du får någonting tillbaka och kan ta del av precis allting. Samtidigt kan du också stötta oss genom en gåva som du kan köpa via vår webbutik. Allting vi får in, det går till att täcka våra kostnader, men också se till att utvecklas och bli ännu bättre. But back to you, Mr. Daniels. So, what did people tell you when you spoke with both migrants? Did they tell you about Sweden, about the situation? What were the responses you got?
The biggest complaint I had from the migrants was how they are segregated. And they have this attitude that they've been forced into being segregated from the rest of the white Swedish community. And how a few of them, especially a community center leader, a guy who's in charge of running or having a high position in one of these community centers in the no-go zones, he had a real attitude, which we could see was most likely the attitude of more people, that these immigrants had a right to come. They had a right to get whatever they wanted and take over really parts of Sweden because of the white guilt that every white person is supposed to have by the colonization that's taken place hundreds of years ago with Africa. And we had some combativeness from a guy like that. We had some combativeness from the young kids where they seemed more irritated that there was a white person in their community, even though it's a white country. But it was shocking too. We had some of the younger people that were like around the 20 years old who had an awareness of the fact that they do get programmed to have a bad attitude towards whites, that the more they've gone out into the community, they've gone to universities, they've realized, oh my God, the police, the white people, they're not the devil. And to hear that from some more educated, more experienced, younger second generation immigrants was really refreshing and shows you what's possible, but it also shows you the negative teaching they have to overcome growing up in these communities.
Mm-hmm. And did you get any reactions when you told them that you're American? Did they say anything about Donald Trump and the policies that he's conducting right now?
Yes, and the best response we had was from a Uber driver, taxi driver from Eritrea, which has a whole regime in Africa that it's hard to escape from. And this guy was so excited about Donald Trump. he said he said that oh, I love Trump. He's so real. He's so cool. And I was like, really? Usually the immigrants, especially who have come as refugees like this guy, they have a real attitude towards Trump. And this guy was so excited. The other immigrants we've talked to, they didn't really talk about Trump that much, but they usually were just excited that I was an American, in their community. Like, oh, America! Wow, wow, wow!
That's a really incredible story, definitely. But did you interview and speak with some native Swedes as well about the situation?
Yeah, yeah, of course. And you can see the frustration of what's going on and these communities being taken over, and hearing stories from Swedes who used to live in those quote unquote no-go zones that they know if it's now been just taken over. And they're also encouraged, it seems like, by the actions that the new government's taking with the Swedish Democrats, with the remigration efforts. They feel like there's at least a hope for the future, and that they're fighting back for the natural Swedes, the whites in Sweden. So I have not yet talked to that many super liberal Swedes yet, who I'm sure are all in favor of all the kebab shops, but I have yet to make that discovery.
So you know, woke person then, but you hope to get an interview with them before you leave.
Yeah, I'm sure I could. I just have to go to maybe a protest, or a Palestine protest, or maybe just look for anybody that has blue hair. I'm sure I can find it there.
Yeah, in Malmö, if you go to Möllevången, I don't think it will be any problem for you to
In where? Mollevånga?
yeah, to find some exactly
Okay,
Möllevången
okay.
exactly. But you're going to Denmark as your next stop. What are your expectations when you go there?
I really don't have any, honestly. I haven't heard that much bad stuff. I'm just gonna stop through there, see what I see. Uh, I've heard that it's easier by talking to three Syrian immigrants. I learned that it's much easier for the immigrants to go to and stay and get citizenship status in Sweden than it is in Denmark. So just by learning that, I imagine that most of the immigrants would make their way to Sweden and not Denmark. So I imagine it's going to be a lot more natural genetic Danish people over in Denmark than we see the genetic Swedes here.
But the United States has also had a lot of problems with mass immigration, illegal immigration, several million people crossing the border. But right now, Donald Trump is taking steps against that. If you compare the situation in the United States, both before and during Trump, to the situation in Sweden, what would you say are the similarities and differences?
I think the biggest difference with the immigration effect that we see in the US compared to here is that we don't feel as much of a dramatic takeover attitude of the immigrants by not assimilating to the culture in the country where they arrive in. In the United States, a lot of them, pretty much most of them, learn English. They don't try to force their way into setting up all these mosques and taking over these communities. There seems to be more of an American identity than I see with the immigrants who come here with their Swedish identity. It still happens in the US. I lived in a smaller area in the southeast of the United States, and you would see the effect of all of the Hispanic or Central American or Latin American immigrants, where they come in and they're at the grocery store and they don't speak English, they only pay in cash, and they work illegally. But in Sweden, they seem to just take over these communities and really have an attitude too towards the people that are from Sweden. And in America, I don't find that as much. When I've interacted with the illegal immigrants that have come to the United States, they're like excited to interact. They're in America. They made it, even if they did it illegally. And here it's like an attitude and a privilege that, oh, we're in Sweden now. This is what we want. And and the fact that they don't want to talk to whites sometimes is shocking. It's not like that in the US.
Mm. But right now, something is happening in the United States with the closed borders, the mass re-immigration. Trump has really set a standard for how to deal with mass migration. And we also have an awakened debate here in both Europe and Sweden about how to handle mass immigration. We want more and more people focusing on getting people to return to their home countries. What would you say that we in Sweden could learn from the United States, from Donald Trump? And would you say that thanks to his policies that re-immigration and stop migration has become a politically acceptable subject?
That's a really good way to frame the question. That was good. That was good. I think that the one thing that Swedes or the Swedish government can maybe learn from Trump is the positive way Trump hypes up people about the idea of making America America again. You guys have these like politically correct terms like remigration, leaving the country. Trump's like deportation, get out of here, you know? and he really fires up his base like us, like me, you know. I get excited. He's talking about, no, we're going to deport you. Bye-bye. See you later. Adios. You know, and in Sweden, it's a different culture though, you know. Swedes aren't Americans. But the positive, I don't know, it's just the remigration in English, right? To me, I don't know how you guys deal with it in the Swedish communication with the Swedish language, but it sounds very proper. It sounds very professional. And the deportation word is like exciting, you know, it's like, you're going to get the hell out of here. But I also see the big difference is that you guys don't have an executor who can make decisions and make those decisions come into effect quickly.
Exactly. It usually takes several years from a suggestion, a political suggestion in the parliament, to go through all these, I don't know how to say it in English, but it has to pass through several instances before it can come to a vote in the parliament. And then it still takes some time before it really passes. So our politicians are really making sure that things take as long as possible to implement.
Yeah, yeah. So what's that like for you when you see that in the US and it moves quickly, and then in Sweden it moves real slow?
Well, I would say that in Sweden we have become so accustomed to things taking a long time. People have this idea that things never change. Everything moves slowly, nothing unexpected, nothing sudden happens. But with Trump right now, a lot of people are looking with hope on what's happening over there and feel like if he can do it, we can do it as well here. Why shouldn't we? So it seems like it has gotten a lot of more energy, a lot more power from his latest victory in November. So hopefully we'll get more and more of that, and the politicians are feeling the pressure now that more and more people are talking about, yeah, we don't want those migrants here. They need to go back home. We don't know who they are. They have no right to be here. We want Sweden to become Swedish again. This is our country. No one should come inside here, force us out, and then take over completely. So a lot of things are happening here, mostly thanks to Trump.
I'll tell him when I get back.
Yeah, I really hope you do that. But one thing also, I don't know if you've heard about the scandal with the government bribing the government of Somalia with 100 million kronor, equivalent about 10 million US dollar, to accept deported criminal Somalians back to their country, about 28 people or so. They gave them more support, more money to accept them, while Trump, as I've understood it, has said, we will cancel everything if you don't accept your own citizens.
True, true. That's interesting that it's a totally different negotiation tactic. That the European, like Sweden, is trying to give a benefit to Somalia, whereas Trump's trying to penalize the other countries if they don't take the people back. Yeah, that's like, see, that sounds like a European negotiation tactic versus an American negotiation tactic.
Exactly. How do you think, let's say, Venezuela, Colombia, or those small countries in Latin America, how do you think they would react if Trump would say, if you accept your own criminal citizens back, we'll pay you $100 million plus extra, apart from these benefits that you're already getting from the American taxpayers? What do you think the consequences would be?
I think they would start negotiating with Trump to get a higher price.
Exactly. So that's what they're doing in Somalia as well. Right now they're saying, oh, we don't really want the criminals. We can accept some law-abiding citizens back. And they all start to negotiate and feel like they have this hook on our politicians to get what they want. Now that they know that the Swedish politicians are willing to pay and not penalize for objecting to cooperate.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't even make any sense because
Welcome to Europe and Sweden in particular.
because if they don't want them back already, they let them go,
Mm. So
and then you only want to incentivize them with money. Of course, they're going to demand more and more money then. Like
exactly.
they're not even begging to get those. What? That's really what goes on?
Yeah, among a lot of other things as well here. But right now, we hope to learn a lot more from the United States on how to deal with this kind of situation. And I hope that the Americans are learning on how not to do things by studying Europe. But if you move away just for a quickie and start to wrap everything up, during your stay here in Sweden, what else did you do apart from visiting these multicultural societies? I think we ran into each other during the debate at Stockholm University that Nicolinia hosted.
Yeah, I got to see the first ever, it seemed like, at least in a long time, tabling debate event that Sweden has had or at a university. I got to see how starting that from the scratch can go and trying to get that motivated. I saw the difference there between a Swedish crowd and an American crowd, which was interesting. And I've also just gotten to go around the residential areas in like Stockholm, up in Upplands Väsby over to Tabi, go around with the transportation system into the center, out to the no-go zones, and I've gotten to see just how beautiful Sweden is. Oh
Yeah.
my God, it's so pretty. It's not just the old town, the old pretty city center of Stockholm, but the normal residential areas, the way the houses are, the nature, the beautiful colors right now as the leaves are changing. And now being down here in Malmö, being in the outskirts of Malmö, now in the city center, seeing just how pretty it is here too, that, Sweden is not fully taken over, right? It's in these concentrated zones where the immigrant communities are, but the natural part of Sweden, how Sweden really is really beautiful. And I'm also shocked to see that the reputation of Nordics and Swedes being cold and unapproachable is not true at all. We've asked different people for help at different times at different stations or stores, and they're interactive, they're sweet, they're helpful, they know English really well. And we've been really excited and blessed by our time in Sweden and also seeing this cultural movement in the college campuses, like with Nick Alenia.
Exactly.
Alenia, seeing you have your own station, seeing the Rick's station and their studio. It's been encouraging to see this conservative movement in Sweden.
Yeah. And right now, a lot more and more Swedes are waking up and embracing their identity as being Swedes, that we have a country that belongs to the Swedish people and we have an exclusive right to it. But before you leave us, Mr. Daniels, do you have any parting words or any last words that you want to send to our viewers, both in Sweden, we have some in Britain, in Ireland, and probably in the United States as well, and Germany also?
If you are a conservative in Europe or specifically in Sweden and you're frustrated by the situation, do anything you can to make your voice heard. That's one of the powerful things that the United States has as a cultural setup where we go to events, we join little groups, we watch these networks like your own network, we donate to those networks, we comment, we share the videos online, we talk to our friends about it. Anything they can do to make their voice heard so other Swedes who want Sweden to be Swedish again cannot feel alone and can be motivated to see, hey, there is a conservative movement that thinks like me and wants to see my country improve. And if you're like that, just make your voice heard in any way you can. Try to connect with groups, go to these debates, because your voice and your pride in your country has more impact than you think.
Spoken like a true American freedom fighter. They just don't dump tea in the Hudson River. They use the words as weapons as well. Thank you, Mr. Sean Daniels, for being with us here today. It was a real pleasure, and I hope we get to see you again. And next time you come to Sweden, please give a holler. I hope you'll be here in summer, for example. It's really lovely when it's so green and warm everywhere.
I can imagine. Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
And thank you all of you who's been watching this interview. Remember to follow us on FrihetsNytt.se, the news site where we publish all the news, but also on our YouTube channel. And if you're not a subscriber yet, please go and subscribe so you'll get an update whenever we post another video. But also remember to follow It's Sean Daniel. It's a connected word, right? If they want to follow you on YouTube. And also, don't forget, follow TV Team Sweden, the man who's really an Swedish expert commentator on the situation in the United States. And if you want to get a Swedish perspective on what's happening in America in Swedish words, don't hesitate to contact him. But thank you very much again, and I hope to see you all pretty soon.